everyone's trying to have as much time as possible, free time. But it's not really time, it's presence.
I'm currently living in Mexico City, and every morning I see this man walking laps around Avenida Amsterdam while I write at my local cafe. And we got talking one day, and it turns out he's a world-renowned meditation teacher, viral TEDx speaker, author with reviews from Deepak Chopra, Lewis Howes, and Rick Roll. He's spoken for Amazon, Facebook, Apple. He's been featured in Times, Forbes, Vogue. He's got some amazing thoughts on meditation without being a monk, and this conversation is worth listening to.
A lot of people have tried to meditate. We've all probably got ads on Instagram, all these different apps.
Yeah.
And everyone's given it a crack, but few have probably, really got something from it.
I think the biggest misconception about meditation is the idea that it's about mind control. And I think that's one of the reasons why people quickly disqualify themselves from thinking that they can meditate, because they have a very difficult time trying to control their mind, and they imagine that there are people out there who can control their mind, but that's not really the case. So the analogy that I like to use is swimming. You guys, you're from Australia, right? So you probably learned how to swim when you were 2 weeks old or something.
Yeah.
I didn't learn how to swim until I was in my 30s. What I realized when I learned how to swim, prior to that I was fighting the water a lot. So it's the same water that you experience, that you're having a great time in, moving around at will, and I'm in there drowning, right? And the only difference is I don't know how to move in concert with the water, right? The hydrodynamics of the water. So with meditation, it's kind of like swimming through your thoughts. That's what it is. The art of meditation is like moving through your mind, your thinking mind. And if you don't understand those principles, your instinct is to fight the thoughts. And if you fight the thoughts, it's like fighting the water while trying to swim. It's going to drown you. You're going to feel like you're drowning in your thoughts, and they're just everywhere. But if you learn how to move in concert with the thinking mind, then you can find that you can move through your mind at will. So that's what I teach people how to do, is how to operate in concert with, or in harmony with, their thinking mind. And then usually what ends up happening is they start to realize, oh my God, I can actually do this, and it's enjoyable. It's so enjoyable that I don't want it to end. So you take an experience that felt like torture, give people some principles, and all of a sudden they don't want it to end, which is a really beautiful thing, because now you don't need discipline. You're just waking up and you're meditating every day, and you're enjoying it, and then you're starting to get the benefits from the practice that only come from consistency.
If we were to do like a meditation right now, what would we do?
Yeah. You want to treat the thoughts like you're in a relationship with them, okay? And you want to create a friendly relationship with your thinking mind, as opposed to an antagonistic relationship. A lot of people treat their mind like the enemy of the meditation. And what ends up happening is you end up creating more of what you don't want when you resist. So it's a whole cliche, what you resist persists. But if you just make that one little switch where you are friendly towards your thoughts, in other words, you have zero judgment, you're completely nonchalant about it, doesn't matter, you'll find that the thoughts that were most bothersome will fade away just on their own. And it's a really beautiful process. Yeah, so there was a study that was conducted at Harvard University in the 1980s. This psychology professor wanted to see if it's possible to suppress your thoughts. So he got a room full of students, and he had them all sitting at tables, and in front of each student was a little silent bell. And he said, okay, for 5 minutes, I want you guys to focus on one thought only, which is the white polar bear. I want you just to close your eyes and think about white polar bears. And as you're thinking about white polar bears, I want you to click the button just every few seconds. And then if you start to get distracted and you start thinking about something unrelated, then obviously you'll stop clicking the button. But then when you remember and come back, click the button again when you think about the white polar bear. So he tracked the number of instances that they were thinking about the white polar bear for 5 minutes. And then he gives them a break. And then he says, okay, now for the next 5 minutes, I want you to let your mind roam free. You can think about anything you want to think about as long as it's not about a white polar bear. But if you accidentally think about the white polar bear, click the button so we can record how many times it accidentally happens. And so he tracks them for another 5 minutes. And then after that, he tallies the scores from the first 5 minutes and the second 5 minutes. And what he finds is that when they weren't supposed to be thinking about the white polar bear, they thought about them more than when they were specifically instructed to think about the white polar bear. Not only that, they were bordering on obsession. That's all they could think about in those second 5 minutes was those white polar bear thoughts. And so the conclusion from that study is that you can't stop your thoughts by trying not to think about thoughts. Number two, if you try to focus on any thought, it doesn't matter what it is, it doesn't matter who you are. After about 4 or 5 seconds, your mind will naturally deviate to an unrelated thought. That's just the nature of the mind. So again, in meditation, one of the biggest instructions that we receive is focus. Focus on your breath, focus on this, focus on that. And the first thing that's going to happen when you start focusing is your mind's going to get distracted. You're going to have an unrelated thought. And if you're not okay with that, you're going to feel like you can't do it. But the reality is you can do it. It's just you're just experiencing the nature of the mind.
Yeah, it's so easy to get caught in trying to be good at meditation and see it as like it's some sort of like, skill of how empty I can make my mind.
Yeah.
Were you always excited to get up and meditate first thing in the morning? Or did you always want to just check your phone as well?
Well, my first several years of meditating, I was a very reluctant meditator. I used to call myself a dabbler. And it wasn't until I met my meditation teacher who taught me these principles of meditation. Sit comfortably, don't try to fight your mind and all of that, where I started really enjoying the meditation. So this is before smartphones. So I would just wake up and look, I don't think it says anything that you look at your phone or don't look at your phone. I don't think that really matters as long as you're prioritizing what's important. It's when you use that as an excuse, like, oh, I don't have time to meditate. And then you go back and take an inventory and it's like, well, you spent 40 minutes on your phone, so I think you do have time actually. And what that really means from a meditation perspective, which is an extension of the spiritual perspective, is that you're engaged in the do more and accomplish less approach to life. In other words, you're doing too much, you're not doing enough of the right things, and therefore you don't have enough time. And it's true, you are busy. You are probably too busy to do the things that you should do because you're occupying yourself with a bunch of nonsense that's not really all that important. So what the meditation does is it allows you to shift from do more, accomplish less to do less, accomplish more. Yeah. And that's another one of the misconceptions that I talk about in my TED Talk, which is it actually refunds you back the time you're investing in it. So there's no such thing as I don't have time to meditate, because the time you're spending is going to be time you're freeing up in your mind to have more orderliness in your thinking and in your day-to-day actions. You're prioritizing better, you're seeing patterns a lot easier, you're spotting connections a lot quicker and all of that, which frees up time.
Do less,
accomplish more.
Yeah. And does that tie into your ideas around like spiritual minimalism?
Yes, that's exactly that. So people say, when did you start becoming a minimalist? And what they're thinking I'm going to say is, I'm going to talk about the time when I moved out of my apartment and into a carry-on bag. But really, the time I started is when I began meditating, when I started taking my meditation practice seriously. Because what I discovered about minimalism is it's not really about how much stuff you have externally or how few bags you carry around with you. It's really about what you're carrying around internally. Because there's a reason why you accumulated all that stuff, And usually that reason is tied to the same things that therapists want to talk about, which is, tell me about your relationships, tell me about your mom and your dad, tell me about, how your perspective on the world. And when you start unpacking all that, you realize, oh my God, I've got all this emotional baggage and all this clutter and all this, these outdated belief systems about myself, about other people. And if I've never really dealt with that, then I'm going to delude myself into thinking I need all these other things to make me feel safe, secure, connected, happy, loved, etc. And usually that is holding on to things that may or may not be serving you. So spiritual minimalism is, let's clear out the inner clutter first, and as a consequence of that, yeah, maybe you'll clean out your closets, maybe you won't, it doesn't really matter, but you'll be more present to whatever's happening around you, which will make you have better experiences all around.
Yeah. So if I wanted to, where would I start with these ideas around
meditation? You can't get around going inside of yourself, man, you know, and that's what a lot of people try to do. There's another saying, you know, all of mankind's problems are a symptom of people not wanting to just sit in the room by themselves for a period of time. You know, just anecdotally, you know, if more people did that, they would have better experiences. And it's one of those things where you can't know that though until you start doing it for yourself, right? Like theorizing about how you would be as a swimmer and you've never gone in the water is not the same thing as actually getting in the water and having that experience and seeing how enjoyable it can be, especially when you understand how to move through the water.
Yeah, I remember one time, I think I'd heard that quote or some sort of variation of that quote that challenged me on a plane ride. And so it was just like a 2-hour plane ride, and I just decided to turn my phone off and not watch a movie or something like that and just sit there for the rest of the plane ride. And it was a completely different, it was a completely different experience. It's so easy just to distract yourself for an hour or two.
100%, man. And look, again, it's not, people will hear that and they'll think, okay, well, I shouldn't either, you know, they feel shame about looking at a movie or looking at their phone in the morning. It's not about that. Just be natural. But just make sure wherever you are, you budget in a little bit of time. And then that way, if for some reason your screen on your chair is broken on the plane, it's not going to ruin your whole week. Because you couldn't watch whatever movie you had your heart set on, right? But if it's working, then great, look at the thing and you'll be probably more engaged because you have this practice going in the background. So it's about elevating all of your experiences because you have more presence. And I posted something on social media yesterday where I said, you know, people say your most valuable asset is time, right? So everyone's trying to have as much time as possible, free time. But it's not really time, it's presence. You can have all the time in the world, but if you're preoccupied and not present, you're basically squandering it.
Yeah, when you're present, it's like timeless. It's timeless, isn't it? When you're present.
Yeah, my teacher says you're a time billionaire. And it's not that you can pretend to be one. Either you feel like it or you don't feel like it. What you're ultimately going for is you want to increase your baseline level of contentment, right? So you can have you get some information about somebody who passed away, or you lost something, or your business partner screwed you around, or whatever. And of course, that's going to ruin maybe a few hours of your day, but your baseline dictates how long you stay in that funk versus how quickly you can bounce back to, okay, well, you know what? This happened the way it was supposed to happen. Let me focus on the lessons instead of focusing on me being the victim of this thing, because that's not going to help me move forward, right? No one ever said, you know, I'm going to ride this victim thing out to being as successful as possible.
If only I can be a big enough.
Yeah, if only I can use the victim thing, I can make as much money and be as successful as possible and have the biggest impact. That's not how it works. So we inherently know that. But sometimes the experience can leave us so broken inside that it feels hard to rebound from it. But if we can do our inner work and get our baseline level of contentment high enough, then we don't have to worry about what's around the corner and whether or not we're going to be able to meet that demand. We already know that we're going to be adaptable to it. And the only question is, how quickly am I going to be able to bounce back from it?
Yeah, the authentic self. It's been, Yeah, it's been on my mind lately. Like living in like an authentic life sometimes can feel like one of the hardest things to do because there's so much, I guess, unconscious things driving us that we don't know. We think we're making the decision for like a particular reason, but it turns out it's actually because of a hidden reason. And I guess that's probably like something powerful about meditation is that it creates probably an opportunity for a lot of the unconscious to come up. Maybe when you sit there in stillness, stuff that you wouldn't think about.
Yeah, that's what you see connections. This behavior is tied to this thing that from my past. That's why it's kind of like you're able to be your own therapist in a way, you know, or at least just become more conscious or aware that there is a pattern. When this happens, I tend to react like this. And maybe that's not the most sustainable way to react to it. Maybe I should react a little bit differently. So self-awareness is the road to self-realization. And self-realization is the term from the sort of spiritual perspective of seeing that everything that I'm experiencing is an extension of me, right? That's really the biggest problem that we have, is we think that there are things that are happening outside of us that are completely disconnected to us. And so I feel helpless as a result of that, or I feel like I need to have power over something, but really that thing is just happening in that way because of whatever's going on inside of me.
Yeah. Our relationships with others are sometimes the biggest insight into who we are, and it's the biggest mirrors, of the people closest to us in our lives. I heard you saying on the podcast with Rick Roll that you can't go wrong on the hero's journey, or when what does that mean to you?
Well, the hero's journey by nature is riddled with ups and downs, and each one of those downs is teaching you something that you're going to then use to get to the next up. So you can't go wrong, because usually the interpretation of I've gone wrong is because you're experiencing a dip, right? But that dip is really just an opportunity. It's a growth opportunity. So we want to just shift our perspective around it and stop seeing it as a setback, or I'm falling behind or whatever. And really, that's when you're in the gym. You're in the inner gym in that moment, where you have an opportunity to go and do some emotional squats.
Leg day every day.
Yeah, every day is leg day. Emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, and that's going to make you stronger, in a functional way, so that when you meet the next obstacle or the next challenge, you can overcome it easier. But there's no graduation. You're not going to get to a point where you've escaped the game, and now you're just floating out there free or whatever. It's just different levels, more refined levels of challenge, and it's all in orbit around you tapping into your purpose, your path, and whatever service opportunities that will involve. Right? You're here to serve. Maybe you know that, maybe you don't know that, but you're here to serve, and the only question is how. And so, and to what extent are you prepared to accept that? And if you're strong enough to accept, because it's going to take you out of your status quo. Your service opportunity is not going to be one where people are going to be able to go with you, and you're going to be comfortable, and it's all going to make sense, and it's all going to be certain. No, none of that is going to be happening. It's going to be lonely. It's going to be very uncomfortable. You're not going to know if you have what it takes and all of that, but if you embrace those dips during your hero's journey, you'll be that much more prepared when the service opportunity presents itself.